Hello and welcome. As usual, we will start shortly, giving folks time to join online. This meeting of the South Whidbey School Board has now been called to order. This is a board workshop, and we will begin with our land acknowledgement. Mrs. Maccaro has volunteered to read it today. Thank you.
Yes. South Whidbey School District would like to begin by acknowledging that we gather on the ancestral homelands originally known as Shekolche and Lushootseed, of the coastal Salish peoples on the lands of the lower Skagit, Tulalip, Swinomish, Snohomish, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish, who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial and have hunted, fished, gathered, and taken care of these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the Indigenous people of this territory and for their enduring care and protection of the land in which we currently occupy and share through the Treaty of Point Elliott, signed by 82 tribes in Mukilteo on January 22nd, 1855. And I just thought I'd mention this, the land and everything is continuously in discussion because there's a recent Washington State court case that just came out about Stillaguamish and their rights to fishing on the eastern side of Whidbey Island, because they considered all of Whidbey Island and the waters around as their ancestral fishing rights. But actually, probably in a battle with the Tulalip tribe and the Swinomish tribe that are on the Swinomish side, they were told that no, their side is the west side. So anyway, just a little tidbit.
Thank you very much for sharing that continuing history of our long-term lived in area. Thank you. This is a board workshop. The majority of this will be a board workshop. We will have one period of business meeting, which we'll get out of the way early, and then we'll go into workshop. While we are in workshop, it is conversation with our community members, both in person and on Zoom, is not only allowed, but welcomed and encouraged. Dr. Clifford will be running us through a training that she did for the full staff at the beginning of the school year. So we'll have less opportunity to talk about the why and the how of the training than to engage in it. But if there are questions afterwards, she's stated that she'll take them afterwards, so we don't interrupt the training itself. With that in mind, we'll move on to our momentary business action, which is Memorandum 252601, approval of conditional certificate. Dr. Clifford, if you'd like to address that briefly.
Yes, thank you. We have sometimes we have staff members who are almost there and they are on the verge of finishing their certificates, but we want them to start and they're ready to be in the classroom. And so we have a conditional certificate in process. That person will be converted to an official certificate when they complete the final pieces of their program. They are it's like hair strings, almost there. And so in order to do a conditional certificate, we have to have a vote from the board that you're aware of it. This person has is going to be as a special ed teacher and has met all of their requirements for special education. And because of the type of program they're going through and the multiple certificates that they're working towards, that's why they have one piece left.
Is there any discussion, debate among the board on this item? Hearing none. Could I have advisory votes from our student representatives, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving Memorandum 252601, approval of the conditional certificate, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The memorandum passes. We'll now move out of our special business meeting and transition back into our workshop format. If you are watching on our Zoom and would like to make a comment to participate in some way, please throw your name and location into the Q&A function, just so that we can know that there's someone who wants to say something. That is accessible through the three dots in the circle more on the far right hand of the menu bar on the bottom of Zoom, at least on my version. So throw up your name and location there and then start typing your comment or question. Again, we will take questions about the why and the how of the training after the training, because we don't want to interrupt those. But if you do have those, please throw them in there and they'll be read afterwards. For those who are here, you're encouraged to participate in the training with us. But again, questions about the why and the how, please reserve for afterwards. Any questions from anyone here about that? Okay, I'll toss it over to Dr. Clifford. All yours.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to stay seated, but I'm going to move here so I can see all of you, because I'm used to that kind of, when I'm doing professional development, I like to see you. And I just really appreciate that we are able to do this training together and have some coherence from boardroom to classroom. And this wasn't just boardroom to classroom, this was our all staff kickoff. It was just a really powerful and wonderful day, I thought. And so I first want to start with, I like to acknowledge when I do some collaboration with AI, and I want to clarify that when AI, we start with a human. So I have content, I know what I'm developing. I use an AI tool, and then, which is Gamma in this case, and then I go back to human. So some of these like really cool slides are from Gamma. Some of the just like traditional slides are from me. So I just, you'll notice that I pulled it out of Gamma and merged it into the slide deck for Google Slides. And so it has their logo on it because it wants to acknowledge when we are utilizing their resource. So it's on each slide. Just wanted you to know why that's there. This content, there's a lot more content, and this is what I narrowed down to during the presentation. But I developed enough that we could probably have 2 more sessions, and it was about an hour, and it was an hour and probably 45 minutes, but I did some opening introductions. We introduced all of our new staff. We introduced the school's foundation, and they spoke a little bit. And we also introduced our goals in more depth. So we're going to get started and just really focus on the professional development and the content piece. And I am going to talk and start with the why, because we did start with the why. But before we do that, I want to first connect in with our goals. And just remind us that here are our 3 district goals, a high level look at those goals. And you can see that there's a through line as in October to our school improvement plans. And then during this session, we're going to focus mostly on social emotional learning. However, we are also addressing academic growth goal and professional development while we're making, and we can make those deeper connections throughout the slides, as you can see that, because if you have solid climate and culture, that helps to support strong academic instruction. And I just wanted to also highlight specifically, there's a board goal that specifically calls out academics. And so I wanted to highlight that here. Today, the board goal that most closely aligns with our work today is board number 2, with a focus on student outcomes. And so we're, like I mentioned before, we're going to be focusing on addressing culture, climate, and social emotional learning. And as I mentioned, this was the content and professional development that we did with the all staff. I've modified it a little bit because we had 100 and almost 80 staff there. So this is going to be quicker, and we're going to have a little bit more personalized approach today. And some of the content, I added some of the things that we did interactive so you can see the outcomes. I'm not going to do those with you because it's such a small group that we can either have conversations, we can do sticky notes, or we can just talk about the data that came out of the large group professional development. So well, first of all, and going to say this just as I did then. So you're going to get the same experience. So as I planned our opening day, I considered how challenging it might be to start with our first professional development session focused on equity, because I'm new to the district. You don't know me, and this can be a sensitive topic. In recent months, I've heard many staff members say that they wanted specific tools and strategies in addressing equity in your daily work. And so this has a through line of all of the conversations, as a follow-up to the equity training at the end of last year. That is something that came up when I was talking to the administrators, when I was talking to staff. So this was a through line that came through. So looking at past trainings, Christy gave me all of the past trainings that we've done for quite a few years. And our staff have engaged in many, many different approaches over the years. And in fact, one year, staff received a copy of this book called Speak Up at School. And this presentation is developed based on the core elements of this book. It's called Speak Up for Schools, or at School. I want to remind us that we all come from different backgrounds, experiences, and comfort levels. Every one of us, as we enter into this conversation. And we're really going to start from the beginning so that we can safely learn and grow together. And I would like to, this is an opportunity to reinforce what you already know because of the training that has already been in place and what you've also experienced in your own background and experiences. While hoping to deepen your understanding, skills, strategies for real-world application. My ask today is that you be fully present and actively engaged, and also asking you to be open and be able to authentically reflect, listen, and learn together. I think that there's one of the things that I shared with staff is that when I've gone to trainings, even when it's something that I feel that I could be presenting because it was my area of expertise, what I put into it is what I got out of it. And so even if this is something that you could run circles around and probably present way better than me, myself, if coming with your full self, you can gain elements and tokens of strength that you want to take with you. And information. So this is an AI slide. Why, it's so beautiful. And it also doesn't really follow, because it has a lot of content, so it kind of doesn't really follow the rules of slide decks. These are the 4 basic strategies we're learning and unpacking today. And I really just want to focus on, if the only thing we walk away with today, and that's what we're really going to be focusing on, is these 4 basic strategies. Interrupt, question, educate, and echo. So that's everything that we do is going to be through line and connected back to these 4 strategies. And I want to start with our why. So, I think that this is really a really important piece when you think about our, in addition to building on the practical request for practical tools and strategies, this is fulfilling our educational vision and mission. We talk about having a global society, students prepared for a global society, students, and I'm going to look this way, a multicultural and who is multiculturally engaged and prepared to meet the challenges of a global society, prepared for a diverse and dynamic world. And what I have heard from a number of stories is that, and from staff, and actually from some members who have lived here, born, raised, legacy families here, many people leave the island and get very many different experiences and then come back. And so our current demographics represent a unique opportunity. We have students, our population is 92% white. So we can intentionally be intentional about expanding perspective and building skills that might not be developed organically through our daily interactions alone. And so when students leave, as well as students coming in, we want to make sure that they can interact in areas that may have a different demographic and a different multicultural mix. And so that we can, so students can be prepared and also that they can come, and when they're here, that they can support all the students that are in our community. So there's another reason why this is really important. Over the summer, there were a couple of incidences where students used racist language, peers laughed alongside. There's other incidents where students had racial images that were just hurtful and were signs that we still have gaps, even though we have done a lot of training, that we still have gaps in our preparation. These moments aren't inevitable, but they are preventable through proactive education. So our SEL goals also call us to engage in difficult conversations around equity and bigotry and to help students build pride of place. So not only does our vision and mission, but our social emotional goals for this year support and kind of this aligns to this work. I am going to share something really personal about why this matters to me. And I'm going to be vulnerable, and I'm going to share a personal story about my personal growth. So most of you know, if you don't, I grew up in a small city in upstate New York. My school district is about 90 or 79% white with 5,000 students. So a little bit larger than our district, not an island district. So, but a small city. When I moved here in the early 2000s, I entered the UW Danforth Principal Program, which focused heavily on preparing equity-driven leaders. But so I was engaged and really deeply embedded in this learning. And in fact, being in that program halfway through the year, I decided that I wasn't going to go back home because I was learning so much about being an equity-driven leader that if I went home, I wouldn't continue my growth. I was worried I wasn't going to continue my growth. And this is about meeting each and every student's needs, and that their race, ethnicity, social-emotional, or socioeconomic background, gender, religion, that none of that none of that determines what our students' outcomes are, right? And so I was infused in this, and yet still, during one of my internships, I used a phrase that was common where I grew up and where I was in school, and that's okay, not okay. And I saw when I shared this with our staff, jaws dropped, and they should have, and that's what I said to them. I did not say this out of hate. I honestly, it was complete ignorance. I had no idea what I was saying. Now, some of you are like, do you really not know? But I didn't have this training. And that was 20 plus years ago. That's not an excuse. It's just a reality. It was for me, this was not part of our conversation. A teacher at the school that I did my internship with, we'll call them Pat, who was gay and with whom we had built a very trusting, mutually respectful relationship, pulled me aside very compassionately and explained to me why that phrase was harmful. I was extremely grateful. I was grateful to learn. I was also embarrassed, and I was ashamed that I hadn't been taught differently. I was embarrassed that my teachers, I don't know if I said this in front of my family. It's not a term that my family used, but if I did, they never corrected me. Or my friends or colleagues before I came here. I also hadn't known better, and I had caused harm. That moment could have gone very differently, but instead, it became a turning point for me. And what's really important for me is that I don't want our students or staff to harm others or to be harmed because of ignorance. And when I say that, I was ignorant, and I'm not saying that as a derogatory term, just a reality of not knowing and not having context or background or understanding. And I want them to know better, our staff and our students and our community to know better and to do better, both on and off the island. And I want us to be, each of us, so even everybody here, to be Pat, someone who's willing to step in with compassion, courage, and care for one another. We all come from different backgrounds. I already mentioned this in experiences, and it's really important that we're open to learning. And that was extremely vulnerable because it's not just in front of a group of staff, but now it is a recorded video. So it's out there. So one of the things that I always start with is making sure that we have, as we lean into our work today, that we have some standing norms or agreements. And from Courageous Conversations, these are the 4 agreements that help to be fully engaged. And they're designed to create a safe space, respectful and productive space for learning and discussion, because there's going to be a little bit of engagement throughout this. And so think about how you can personally uphold these agreements. I really focus on the high level, stay engaged, experience discomfort, speak your truth, expect and accept non-closure. But the bullets under that provide additional context if you need that. So take a moment and think about how you can personally uphold these agreements. Or if for you, there are others that are not listed that you want to add for yourself so that you could actively engage and be reflective during today's session. So I'll just give you a few seconds. Okay, I'm going to transition. And I'm going to keep us going because I want to stay within the hour, and we're getting there. So the first thing that I had us do, and again, we had table groups of 6, 7, and 8, just have a quick conversation, 2 to 3 minutes. So here you can do it with your elbow partner or however you'd like. Just have a conversation about what biased language, what is biased language. All right, I'm going to give us 30 seconds to finish our conversations. Thank you. I really appreciate the conversations, asking for and looking up definitions, talking about perspectives or lack of knowing and understanding, about stereotypes. I could name it and name more. So thank you for having that conversation. What we did was we had folks take a survey, and they were able to, and I'm going to show you the response to the survey in a moment, but we wanted to make it a visible but anonymous feedback. And we polled folks and asked them to share what they hear at school. The poll only allowed us to select one, and we know that there's more than one, probably multiple of these areas. And so you'll see, and a lot of people use their phone, and I did not require it, and we didn't have, not everybody had laptops, so we did the best we could. But this will just give you a general idea. 78 people did respond, and the one that came out the highest was disability or ability or disability. The second one was race, and then the third one was social economic status. But if people were able to do multiple submissions, I don't know what that would have looked like. So they picked that. So that was really important for us to look at and notice. And then the next poll was asking, how often do I speak up when these situations arise? Do I never speak up? Do I sometimes speak up? Only when I feel safe? And then I always speak up. So before I go to show the poll, just take an internal moment to think about where this falls for you. This is a personal reflection and does not need to be shared out as a group, but take a moment and then I will share with you. We had a smaller amount respond to this, not by choice. I didn't want people to have to use their phone, so I kind of said, if you can either do a personal reflection or you can use your phone. All right. And so we have people that are all over the place, and we had 50 responses. So that's still pretty well compared to the 78. Most people, you can see the highest was when people feel safe. There were a few people that said that they always speak up, and then sometimes, and then a few people said never. And it's important to be honest and to be aware that because people who always speak up feel confidence and feel like then they have the strategies, or they just feel very, there's a level of conviction that overcomes whatever prevents other people from speaking up. And some people who say never, it doesn't mean that they don't care about it or that they don't, that it's not important to them, but they just may not know how. And there's a lot of factors to being able to speak up. So when doing this work and speaking up, it's important to ensure that you are ready. When you hear prejudice or stereotypes in your schools, keeping all students feeling safe, you need to prepare yourself in advance. And there's two ways that you can prepare yourself. Many staff, teachers, and just people in general get caught off guard, which is why preparation is critical. And being ready helps you respond confidently and in the moment. And you want to speak up in the moment, every time. So one way to do that is make a commitment to yourself. And this can be a personal mantra. It can be a Post-it reminder that you put on wherever it is, on your mirror, every time you wake up in the morning, whatever. Or just a mental note. It could be, I will speak up every time. This commitment reinforces your intention to act consistently. The other thing is to develop ready responses. Having ready responses prepares, if you're prepared with phrases or strategies you can use immediately, that's part of having those ready responses is really important. Later, we'll discuss the pocket guide. Some of you have already started folding them, and we will fold them later. But then, and that has some examples, and it's small enough that you can fit in your pocket. I don't have a pocket today, so I can't show you, but some of you do. And the other thing is practicing these ahead of time builds confidence in real situations. And we'll explore, we'll take some time and do some practice in a little bit. The second part of being ready is preparing your students, and focusing on these 4 areas is a really an important and critical part of that. So intent versus impact. That helps students when they understand that what someone means to say and how it affects others can be different, and the impact really matters. Even unintentional harm still hurts. So I had no intention of harming anybody. And until somebody educated me, I didn't understand the impact of what I was saying, right? So intent versus impact is helpful to help ourselves, but also our students understand that. Language and content or context is also important. So don't just say, don't use that word. Explain why words can hurt by sharing their history and meaning. This helps students choose their words thoughtfully. Now, not everybody knows the why, but we'll get into that, and that you can do that research together, and that's about how you educate. And then building classroom communities, creating classroom agreements together that identify harmful language and practice better alternatives. I don't like to identify, I don't like to name harmful language, but if you don't know it's harmful, then you can't not, then you don't know not to use it. So part of this is helping people to understand what is harmful language and then what are better alternatives. And then we know that strong classroom norms make it easier to address problems when they arise for both the students and the adults. And then modeling, showing students how to speak up by doing it yourself demonstrates the responses that can be calm and respectful and not aggressive. So we'll review simple strategies to help you and your students speak up in the moment. And I'm going to review this at the end, but we're just first starting with staff. We will be engaging with students, and we're going to be working with staff and have students be a part of that. And we're in the process of developing that rollout. So we're going to start now by doing a little activity, and we're going to make our little pocket guides so that you can use them and reference them throughout this process. So everybody have one? All right, so Gwendy started by folding it like the hot dog, and that's what you need to start, by folding it like the hot dog. So, and that's, I'm trying to model after a primary teacher, and I'm not a very good primary teacher. So this is what the hot dog roll looks like. So that's, yeah, yes. Then the next step, once everybody has it up, can you put it kind of up so I know you're ready? I'm doing my, thank you. Thank you for going along with me. This is my teaching the younger students. Have the different, the 4 strategies in front of you, facing you, and then fold it like a hamburger or make them hug each other. All right. Now you're going to open up your hamburger just a little bit, and you're going to take the outer edges and you're going to make them hug the inner edges of that each side of the hamburger. And then you can close it all together and make it one big hug and one little pocket. Okay. So what you'll see is it reminds you that it helps you with a mantra if you want this mantra. I am a person who will speak up against bias. So that's one mantra you can have right with you in your pocket. There you go. That's right. Yep. So then when you open it up, it reminds you of the 4 strategies. And then when you flip it back open, it gives you a little detail about the strategy and some examples of how you can try that strategy. We're going to go into more depth throughout this training, but this is an easy resource to remind you. And each of our staff did this together. I had Kristen Coda, our elementary teacher, who is now our administrative intern, come up, and she led them through, and she did those hot dogs and hamburgers and hugs much better than I did. That's why I had her come up. All right. We are not going to watch how to do that. All right. So now, each and every one of these strategies we use in our everyday lives in different ways. I have seen people. Now, I want to be clear that interrupting is not something that we want to do all the time. It's not always respectful to interrupt, but we do use that strategy sometimes when someone has misspoken and we need to provide clarification, right? Or we need to redirect something. I've watched people get really curious and unpack ideas. And so, and that's part of the, I'm sorry, is the questions. So you're unpacking ideas, or you want to know about a person, or you want to know about a thing, and you get really curious and you ask lots of different questions. I have seen all of us educate students, parents, colleagues. And I've also heard staff and board members, and in fact, that was one of my examples, echo each other in agreement during meetings or build on. I have been in meetings where I say, I agree and I build on that. And so we've got, is this our echo? This is echo. Okay. And so that's something that, as you're building on a conversation, that's a way of, that's something that we do all the time. The difference now is applying these familiar communication skills intentionally when we encounter bias and hateful language. We're taking tools you already have and using them strategically to create safer, more inclusive environments. Does not mean that it's easier. You must speak up against every bias remark every time it happens. Letting one go, which this is going to take time. So I just want to say, these are the words that I used, but it's going to take time for us to get there. Letting one go and then speaking up against the next one sends an inconsistent message that sometimes bias is okay and other times it isn't. Letting the first instance go without saying anything also sends a message that anyone within earshot that it's okay to say bigoted things. So that's why it's important to use these strategies to speak up in the moment every time. These strategies can be used individually or together depending on the person and or context. You may choose to use one strategy initially and then follow up and use another strategy in a different context or location. So you may say, can you tell me more about that, to kind of interrupt, use a question to kind of stop as a way of interrupting, and then do some education later, because you can do any of these things that you can interrupt in the moment, but we also want to help to build a different culture. So we don't want to just stop it in that moment, but we want to change how we treat each other, and we want to make sure that we are being respectful and kind to each other all the time. And so we're gonna get into these different strategies. Okay. Did my batteries die? Can you just? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yes. So to interrupt effectively is to be present, calm, direct, clear while avoiding aggression. So speaking up doesn't mean that we have to, we can be calm, we can have courage, we can have compassion. An interruption can call out a remark, it can focus on impact or redirect the conversation. And there's a lot of other ways, but these are just 3 different examples of how we can interrupt. And it can be calling out, here's some quick examples and responses. So calling out language, I don't like that word, or I don't like words like that. That phrase is hurtful. That's not appropriate language here. Expressing your reaction. I don't find that funny. I'm uncomfortable when I hear things like that. And redirecting. Whoa, let's not go down that path. Right? So there's a couple of different ways that we can interrupt. I normally would do engagement. We're going to do engagement right after this. So you're going to have time to do some talking and unpacking this a little bit more. Oh, it worked. Sweet. The next strategy is question. Simple questions are another way to interrupt everyday bigotry. Questions place the burden on the person who made the remark, and sometimes it's a remark, or sometimes it's something else, an action. When faced with having to explain a joke or support a stereotype, people sometimes find themselves at a loss when they're questioned and asked about those things. So here's 3 different approaches to questioning. You can ask for clarification. What do you mean by that? Can you explain that? You can encourage perspective taking. How do you think that sounds to others? What if somebody said that about your group? And then probe deeper. Why do you say that? Now, sometimes why can get people defensive. So again, you need to determine what's going to work in the context and with the people that you're with and the relationship that you have with the different people that you're engaging with. Or tell me more about where that comes from. So just tell me more about that. Tell me more. The really important thing about questioning about all of these things, but specifically about questioning, because when you ask questions, sometimes it can get people defensive, is your tone. You want to be genuinely curious, not accusatory, stated in a gentle but clear manner. The goal is to extend the conversation, not shut it down, and to help people examine their own thinking rather than trap or embarrass them. So that, again, it goes back to courage, care, and compassion. The next strategy is educate. And I said this at the very beginning, and I'm going to restate this all the way through. Not all hateful speech stems from hate. My example, my story was exactly that. There was no hate behind that. Sometimes it's ignorance at work, and there's a lack of exposure to diverse populations. Other times, people simply don't know the negative power behind certain words or phrases. So when to educate? A good first step is in the moment of biased, particularly if it's the first time you've encountered it with, if you'd encountered it with someone, is to explain why the term or phrase is offensive. So that's a good way of doing that as the first step. So here's 3 different strategies around educate. One is learning together. So at the beginning, I had shared about kind of working through the history. If you don't know the history, you can say, I don't know the history to this word. If you don't know, I don't know either. Let's look it up. I know that it's a word that we shouldn't be saying. So let's learn more about this. Investigate the origins, explore how it evolved into a word that expresses bias, prejudice, and discrimination, and offer context. So provide background, historical context, and perspective. So to educate, sometimes you can either learn together, or if you want to educate, it might be an area that you have some knowledge in, and then you're able to help to educate. They're in the classroom and in our setting. We can sometimes give students a chance to research a topic, specific topics to learn the history. We can hold class meetings to discuss findings. It's not about it's just a fact finding, not a opinion or whatever, but just kind of having those class meetings. And you can also use role play to explore different scenarios, but you also have to be really careful about how we do that. And so each of these strategies around educate, and those are just 3 examples, there's many more, have to be done with thought, and intention, and have to be carefully facilitated so that it manages and maintains that courage, kindness, and compassion and care. And then the final strategy, the 4th strategy, is echo. So being the first person to speak up is really powerful. Being the 2nd, 3rd, and sometimes the first person to speak up is probably the most courageous, because it might be really hard. Being the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th voice to join the interruption is also really powerful. In group settings, when someone has said something biased and multiple people speak up, the echo power of these voices can have a multiplying effect. So how do you echo? One is you can reiterate the anti-bias message, reinforce what the first person said. You can thank the first speaker. Thank you, acknowledge their courage in speaking up. Or you can do both. You can combine the appreciation with the reinforcement. So Director Williford, thank you for speaking up. I agree that that word is offensive and we shouldn't use it. So it can be as simple as that. And I could speak about the benefits. The benefits of echoing is showing the speaker that they're not alone. in the objection. And if people are building confidence, that is a really important thing to feel like, to know that 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 they're not alone. Demonstrating our community standards to everyone present. So if it's our norm to be respectful to each and everyone, then if we're echoing that respect, then that's honoring our community standards and demonstrating them. It reduces the burden on any single person to address bias. One person shouldn't do any of our work alone. It's why we talk about our community and how we work together as a community and the culture of care in our district and our schools. It's because we work together. And it creates a culture where speaking up becomes normalized. So now that we've covered these 4 strategies, I'm going to have you do some group work, and you can work with your elbow partners, or you can shake it up a little bit. But elbow partners might work just fine. You guys all were really engaged earlier. So, oh, okay. So this in front of you, and I had everybody do a jigsaw, but I don't think I'm going to do that today. This is from this book. It's the chapter around the in the moment, and it reviews all 4 strategies. And so this is just reiterating kind of what I said and giving you a chance to review this and skim it. And then how I did this is I had jigsaw, so I had 4 different people at the table, or a couple of people take each strategy and just read that section. And then on a note card, you all have sticky notes by you, sticky notes. Just write either the strategy and maybe either explaining the strategy or what phrases or words you would say in using that strategy. So I'm going to give you 5-7 minutes to scan this, and then you can have conversations with your table groups, elbow partners.
So you'd like us to each address one of them with our group, or just look at each of them and work together to do?
That was confusing because I shared with you what I did with the group. Ideally, if you each read one and then talked about it as a group, then that's going to be quicker and you're going to be able to get through this. I just want to make sure that if that works for everybody, then that's great. If you want to read it all and then have a conversation, you can do that too. Yeah. That's right. Okay. So let's just count it off. Oh, go ahead.
Why don't the 2 of us just cross the table?
You know, we're going to just have a whole group. Yeah, you can do that. And then when we do the discussion, we can do it whole group.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. wrap it up. Oh. Okay. The clicker is done.
There's a there's a comment in the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then the other thing that I didn't go through, but briefly had people be able to take a look at this because there's different ways to response to students depending on the level. And so this was a quick review of that. We didn't go in depth, but we will do more work with this with staff. And so I wanted to make sure that we shared that. And then the next. And then for the closing, I just, wanted to remind us that being prepared, being polite in the way that we engage, and that's both prepared for ourselves and our students, being polite and mindful in how we engage. And then, hold on, my computer. I've been referencing things on here and it fell asleep. So hold on one moment. Okay, so putting it all together, being prepared, and I guess it's not polite, positive, which is similar to being polite, being positive and how we engage, thinking about that tone. The one of the things that I didn't share is also really knowing about where you are, the location in which things are happening, hallway, classroom, in small group, one-on-one, a large group. Just being aware of that may change how you want to engage and what strategy you may use. As well as knowing your relationship, because how you enter into that conversation, that all those things matter. And so being mindful of that, and that also, and then being confident, practicing and having these tools and strategies with you, and having your little pocket guide is there so that you can be confident in what you're and how you're showing up and how you're speaking up. And then remembering that this work is for us to do collectively, and we're not doing it alone. We want to do it together. So we need to work together to make a difference in our schools and in supporting our students and staff. And then finally, I just wanted to share that we are going to continue to support staff and reinforce this. This was a very quick kind of overview and really hit on those 4 different areas or strategies, but we're going to continue to reinforce this work. So this was a first step. We're also going to engage staff and then work on with students on how we then roll this out to students, because we want to support them in being able to know why, what, and how we can engage to create a safe environment, and how we can be compassionate and caring, but also take courage and be courageous. And then this is a one, speak up at school is a first strategy that we're building on. The next strategy is, and it's based on this work, but it's more comprehensive. It is called hate speech. A number of school districts are doing it, and our Northwest ESD is hosting the training. So Lake Washington has their person that leads this work often does the training at the Northwest ESD, and a number of school districts have participated in this. And it's the people that go get trained, and they train you to then train and do this work. And it also, it's actually a little bit more comprehensive and a little bit easy, a little bit more in depth than the work. So it's an expanded version of this. It gives us different and better tools, I think. This is a great first step, and this is a really good foundation to build off of. And so we will work this year with our equity team, with staff members, students, and all of our leadership, our principals will be a part of this training. And then this year we will work on designing that so that we can roll that out next year to do a part 2 and a deeper lens of this. And so more information is coming. So I just ask one final reflection. What strategy gives you the most confidence to speak up? And you don't have to share it out loud, but it's for you to make a reflection. And that is it. And as I said to the staff, I thank you so much for your deep engagement. This is, even though it was might have been affirming or reaffirming what you already know. Engaging in learning takes mental effort. And so after a long day, I really appreciate each and every one of you. It's a privilege to do this work together and to be a part of this community. And so thank you for that. And I look forward to continuing this work together. And so I'm done with this. I do want to make one little statement. Um, so thank you for engaging the professional development, and thank you. And you all were awesome, and thank you for taking the time to debrief and review and engage with each other too. And I just, this work is important because it's really about social emotional learning and really about creating a real strong climate and culture for each student. And just focusing on this is having caring and courageous and compassion for each and every one of us and how we engage. And it's not just our students and our staff. And I just wanted to acknowledge that this is really, really important. And a part of this being really important is, I want to give a quick safety update. That following today's tragic shooting at Evergreen High School in Colorado, I want to emphasize that our SEL learning is really important. It's so critical. That students and that here we want to emphasize that our students and our staff, that safety remains our highest priority, our top priority, not highest, but top priority. And in our South Wigwam School District. Our thoughts are with the families and the community that is affected and the students in the schools. That's a really hard thing to go through. And we want to reiterate that we continue to implement our security protocols. We keep all our doors locked during school hours, and people are appropriately vigilant. Not worrying, but appropriately vigilant and making sure that we are really, really supporting our students and ensuring that it's a safe environment. And we do that to making sure that we have a secure space so that students can focus on their learning, so that they can focus on being present each and every day, so that we can support our entire school community by doing that. So I just wanted to make that and just know that this work is just an extension of ensuring that people feel brought in. And that we can work together no matter what the situation is, and so that we can create a safe space for our students and acknowledge that we just also have our thoughts towards the community in Colorado. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Clifford. I really appreciate your connection of this work to work in trying to make our schools as safe as humanly possible, because I think that they are totally intertwined. So thank you very much. We do have one community comment, as Director Greenhair noted. It says, "This is Charlene Davenport. I zoomed in from the Bandon Library on the southern coast of Oregon. I wish I was there to actively participate. Thank you, Dr. Clifford." Thank you for joining in even from afar. Do we have any comments or questions on the training itself, or how it was implemented at the school?
Okay. So I do have a question because I'm big on evidence-based. So how are we going to bring this around at the end of the year and see how we've implemented? All right, try this again. What are your ideas for, or with the staff? Did you have kind of like a ability to measure kind of at the end of the year how we're implementing? Because I know some of these points we touched on were in a recent survey where there was an element of these that we had the ability to work on and improve.
So I really appreciate that. One of the things that I didn't do at the beginning here is share what we did as our opener. And we asked 3 questions. One was, how do you connect with students? And I'm just paraphrasing, what's in place to ensure that it's a safe space for students based on our staff's perspective? And what conditions do our staff need to feel safe at school? And part of our goal on social emotional learning is to do surveys throughout the year with students and staff. And so we'll do some of that work throughout there. I think if I do this, if I do, and we could do the survey at the end of the year. I don't know that I'll have everybody that I shared at the beginning. I don't think that if we do the survey at the end of the year, I'm still going to see that we have gaps. So I don't know that doing that survey, the poll, sorry, not the survey, the poll is going to be a good barometer. But I think having those surveys that focus on do we feel safe and some of the questions that will be incorporated into there, we'll have that as benchmarks throughout the year to inform us. And I also want to acknowledge that this is this work, as much as we need it to be addressed now, and we want everything to be want these things to no longer happen. It does take time. It takes time for our those that are learning this to be confident in being able to use it and be aware of it, and then teaching our students. And so it's going to take time, but I'm looking to use our surveys to show us the progress that we're making.
If I may follow up with that, one of the elements, it works now, on there was coverage bias, because that's kind of where this language comes from, whether it be unconscious or conscious bias. So a lot of the work is done on our own. In here, it says it's not our job to educate people, but at the same time, lead by example. Modeling was another element, but it also involves a lot of work on us ourselves for those bias that we're aware of and ones that we're not aware of. And when we work in a group of people, sometimes norms can become unhealthy. So it's almost like we kind of have to constantly check in and go, oh, okay, maybe I'm veering off to the left here. So in that, there'll be conversations around kind of a check-in on biases. I mean, is that something we're encouraging in the district? Because one is to perform based off of bias comments. The other is to work on our own bias elements that we may not even be aware of, just like with you, unintentional.
Yeah, I yesterday we had our admin leadership cabinet meeting, and we were talking about how we want to engage staff. And there are probably 2 other sessions that I can do related to this. So we're going to coordinate what that looks like. And also we're having conversations and our conversations about problem solving when things come up, so that we can practice how we're going to engage to model. And then we will also support and have that modeled within our schools.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on to.
I have a
Go ahead,
question.
please.
Well, first of all, I want to applaud you for giving us this material, but also for having done this in front of a much, much larger crowd, of just like holding a space for teaching something that can be like uncomfortable in front of a audience that big. I think that's, it really says something. My question is, did you get feedback after the training or after the day about how it went? And if so, how was it received?
That afternoon, I visited all of the schools because I had the morning session, and then the teams did school level specific professional development, and I got really positive feedback. I do have an exit ticket that I'm planning on sending out tomorrow. Normally I do it right away, but I wanted to give them the summary highlights, which I'll share with you too, of that opener. And so it took me some time because we had some handwritten ones too to compile. So I got feedback at all levels, and also on the first day when I visited. Staff were really appreciative of the professional development. They appreciated my vulnerability. People said that I've got strategies, and that is what they asked for. And even people who I sat during lunch, our wonderful food and nutrition services staff provided breakfast and lunch. I sat at lunch with a table with folks that know this stuff and could probably train this stuff. And they said, I wrote this down, and I'm going to share this with my students, these words. So even people who I wasn't sure if this was going to be impactful for them, it had an impact. But I am going to send an exit ticket survey to get specific feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have also been approached by staff members in the public to compliment Dr. Clifford on the job that she did with this training and the impact of the training. So it hasn't just been to her.
I think that also speaks to the hard work that the group did that day. I've heard a lot of feedback from different folks who felt, you know, like you said, heard about needing strategies, needing some concrete practice that they could bring into their classroom so that it's not just sort of this cloudy umbrella of ideas. There's actually these pillars of action. And I think that that's really important. So yeah, I heard it was a great morning.
Anything else on this item? Okay. Oh, yeah. Get you a mic too. Let's get you a mic too. For those who are online.
Hello, working? Had 4 questions. I'm curious about the scope of the problem as it exists right now. Will there be some sort of report of success? Are there successes already in place or problems that are being corrected that can be specific? And next is, will there be feedback to the public? This is a pretty small group, so how do the rest of the folks in the school district get to hear about this? And I'm curious how much time will be devoted out of the school day for the teachers and for the students? Does it eat into their other work?
Okay, I'm going to try to remember those and try to be as explicit and succinct as I can. So, scope of the problem. I am still new, so I'm still learning the scope of the problem, but I have had meetings with multiple different groups in the community, and I've seen evidence, at least 2 situations that have been brought to me of this specific of a problem related specifically to this work. So I know it exists. I am still gathering information on the scope. So I know that it is large enough that we do need to do something because staff asked for input and feedback. So I need to still use this year for listening, learning, and asking questions to make sure that I really dive in and have a better understanding of the scope of the challenges. Measuring, we are going to be measuring throughout the year, and through surveys and some other strategies. I may, depending on how we decide, we may do focus groups. I don't know what that will look like yet. We're still designing what that looks like. You asked about how we will, how much time we're dedicating. This should be part of the SEL work and part of the communities of care and potentially built into assemblies or advisory. So it's not that we're stopping academics to focus on this, but if we're going to do some training and build some understanding, we will do that at times that are natural times to build that in. And then it should be part of how we do business. So students or staff might apply some of these strategies during the academic setting. But so we're going to dedicate some time for professional development, but we also have math work we need to do and some other things. So I don't have the exact number, but I can tell you that it's not going to negatively impact academic instruction. And then you asked about the larger community, and that's a great question. And I don't have an answer. I have to talk to the administrative team, and that's one of the things that we need to talk about. Sometimes we give a little update to families and review this with families. So we may do that before we roll it out to students.
One other note is that we do have discipline data in the school improvement projects or school improvement plans that
Thank
can
you.
help shed some numerical data on this.
Yes, thank you for reminding that. And I just wanted to say that this was a collective effort. I got feedback from a lot of people. And like you said, it was about the people and how they participated. And this went really, really well because of how everybody showed up and our community. So, so thank you.
Anything else? All right, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to participate in the professional development that is also rolling out to our teachers and eventually our students. I think it's very important for the board to experience and the public to see what's going on to make our students feel safe and like they belong. So thank you. We have one other item on the agenda tonight, which is a policy review item. Review policy 1240, board appointed committees. That's something that we had talked about at the previous meeting about wanting to get a little more detail on. And this is something where we can look at it. We can change it if we want to, but we can also provide detail in procedure if we don't feel a need to change this policy. So Dr. Clifford, do you want to address what we had discussed, or your
We can tag team this. Yeah. So both Director Williford and I did some research, and then we met and followed up, and our research aligned. So that was great. And I learned that best practice is that if the board wants to do a little bit more investigation or do a little bit more work on some board work that is going to take more time, or you just want to go a little bit deeper and it doesn't need to take the time of the collective board, there might be 2 board members and the superintendent that might take some time to do some deeper work, and that's a board committee. You might invite guests to join that conversation, but not have ongoing guests or not have ongoing committees. The other thing is for as soon as a committee has staff involved, then it becomes a district committee. So that is best practice. And as we talked about that, do you want to add?
I'm trying to work back to remembering our discussion, which was 3 weeks ago now, I think.
It was 3 weeks ago, yeah.
In my recollection of the discussion, it was looking at how we had done it in the past in this district, how and that's what I brought. And then Dr. Clifford brought what other districts do and what is best practices. And then we looked at what it actually said and whether that felt like it covered what we needed. This would suggest the best practices, which I believe are covered by this also, would suggest that things like the Climate Action Committee is a district committee because it is something that will have a larger effect than just a recommendation to the board. The way I'm looking at it in retrospect after learning best practices is the board put a request to put a district committee together and put a request to that district committee to present us with policy suggestions. But there is a lot more work within the district for that committee to do in its role as a district committee. And I use the example because I think it's a lot clearer than trying to speak in hypotheticals. So if we wanted to have if for some reason we thought it was necessary to have a committee to discuss whether or not we wanted to have seconds to all of our motions, we could have 2 board members and the superintendent sit down and look at Robert's rules for small boards and best practices from other districts to discuss that and bring it back to the board. If we wanted to have 2 people, so theoretically we have been making board committees when we say, Joe and Marnie, would you like to work on the wording for this and bring it back to us? But we've been doing it in an ad hoc, unofficial manner. And I think that that's fine for things like policy between workshop and business meeting, but we could use it in a more official manner.
That's a great example. Yep. And you said this, but I want to explicitly reiterate that district committee may be providing and doing a little bit of research to specifically respond to something that the board is working on and the board wants input on. So while the district committee might be doing more work and it is a district community, we absolutely can and should, if it's related to the board and you want some specific input and feedback and it's aligned with the committee's work, that is perfectly aligned to that process.
Certainly, yeah.
I do have a question. So what is the process for a district committee to be formed?
That would be at the discretion and direction of the superintendent.
Okay.
We could request that one be formed. We could, in the Climate Action Committee case, for instance, we could have a memorandum saying we want one formed. And that would be a directive to the superintendent to then form a district committee. But personally, I think that we have to be very careful with that to stay in our lane. For instance, we directed the Climate Action Committee provide us with policy. That's in our lane. If we had directed that the Climate Action Committee look at the recycling program in the buildings, that would have been out of our lane. So we need to be very careful about how we put requests to the superintendent to create a district committee. But I would say that that is the the superintendent's lane, and
I agree. The only other, well, there's a couple of ways, but also through our CBA, there was a bargain committee that our council that is coming, and that's our instructional council. So that is one other venue. And we will eventually have a special ed a superintendent special ed advisory council that will be midway through the year that will start that. But I also want to be really mindful about not having too many committees, because when you have too many committees, then you water down the work and it becomes ineffective.
other questions, thoughts? Do we feel like we need to change this policy in any way to represent that reality, or can we clarify in procedure to do so?
I think the latter, and it would be good to have a procedure 1240 since we mention it. And one of my pet peeves is policies mentioning procedures that don't exist.
Absolutely agree. Okay, so it sounds like we do not need to have this on our business meeting agenda for 2 weeks from now. Dr. Clifford and the rest of, and other parts of the admin, as she wants to bring in, can create the procedure, and yeah, we can move forward. Anything else?
Thank you for doing that work.
Okay, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Good night.